Hey guys, quick disclaimer before we get into this video. I didn't realize how long it was going to take to go through all of these commanders, especially since so many of them have backsides to them. So we are doing this as a two-part video. I will have part two come out in a couple days. So make sure you subscribe to see that when it comes out. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the first half.
Hey guys, hope you're having a great day. Today, as of the recording of this video, hopefully I have this video come out the same day that I'm recording it, is Wednesday, April 5th. And we now have all of the new set, March of the Machines, released to us. So today I scoured through the internet and I think I have collected the image of every single commander, legendary creature that is, from the new commander precons as well as the main set. And we are going to go through them and do a tier list of them. All right, let's get the disclaimers out of the way. One, again, because today is just the official date of everything getting out there, if I accidentally overlook a legendary creature, my bad. Two, my allergies are kicking my butt, so I apologize that my voice is probably not as smooth and sexy as usual. And then as far as how the tier list itself is going to go, S tier for me, this is obviously going to come down to my own opinion, so if you disagree with me, that's fine. You can let me know in the comments what you would rank some of these commanders, but for me, personally, how I am going to be doing this is S is a commander that I for sure want to build. A is really cool, I could see myself building it. B is cool, but I'm not particularly interested in playing it. C is kind of in a mix of good card, not a good commander, also not that interested in building it. And then D is kind of just the bottom tier. I don't see a reason to play this card in the 99 or as the face of the deck. All right, with those disclaimers out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into this. There are a lot of double face cards in this set, so it is going to take us quite a while to get through this, so let us try to be brief and swift. So, the first card is Ayarda, Widow of the Realm. So for 1 black, Elf Noble, 3/3. She says tap, sacrifice another creature or artifact, and then she deals X damage to target opponent or battle, and you gain X life, where X is the sacrifice permanent's mana value. Then you can pay 5 and a red Phyrexian mana to transform it, activate only as a sorcery. She transforms into Ayarda, Furnace Queen, which is a 4/4 Phyrexian Elf Noble. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So this is actually a pretty cool Rakdos artifact commander, and I've been thinking about building a Rakdos artifact deck as well. If you guys remember the Mishra precon that came out when Brothers War came out, well, it also had blue in it, but it was a really cool similar kind of deck. So I think if you want to build a similar deck to that, but you don't care if you have blue in the deck, this is probably a pretty decent option for your commander. The fact that it's also going to help you stabilize by gaining you a little bit of life. Ayarda herself is going to help you deal damage. And then I don't think she's going to be that hard to flip. 5 mana, 6 mana, depending on how you want to look at it, isn't that much to ask for, especially in an artifact deck where you're going to have a lot of mana rocks flowing around. I don't think it's going to be all that hard to flip her. I will say the fact that you have to exile it at the beginning of the next end step does mean that you're going to be limited. You're not going to be able to loop the same artifact over and over again. But if you're just running a bunch of artifacts that have good enter the battlefield effects or leave the battlefield effects, which there are plenty of, you should be able to make something pretty fun, pretty exciting. You will have to be running quite a bit of creatures, though, in order to make the combat matter, which is probably the win con. And also on her front side, dealing that damage to battles. I don't know how relevant that's going to be. I think I'm going to have a video come out next week or the week after talking a little bit more about battles, but I'm not convinced that they're going to be that impactful. At least in 60 card formats. I think in Commander, there is argument that it'll add a little bit of flexibility to the game. So I actually, the longer I think about it, when I did the Phyrexia All Will Be One tier list, which I'll link up above, you can go check that video out as well. There was another Rakdos commander that was artifact based that I also thought was pretty cool, and I don't know if I like this as much, but I think it's still a pretty good option. I think if you want to do a Rakdos artifact deck, I think that this is a pretty sweet choice. All right, next up we have Baral and Kari Zev. So these team up cards, just in general, I love them. I did a video about those as well a while back. I'll link that up above. Go check that video out. I go a little more in depth about my actual thoughts about these cards, but brief recap. the fact that we have two characters from the same plane working together on the same card, and then flavor-wise, that card kind of represents both of those characters. Really, really cool. Some of them are hits, some of them are not as much of hits, but overall, I think the idea is super cool, super fun, and a lot of these cards are pretty powerful. So Baralan Kari Zev is from Kaladesh. So for 1 blue red, 2/4 human with first strike and menace, whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana value. If you don't, create First Mate Ragavan, stupid monkey, a legendary 2/1 red monkey pirate creature token that gains haste until end of turn. I think ultimately this is going to be a pretty decent Storm commander, being able to cast a spell and then cast another one with lesser mana value. That seems like a good way to get your Storm count up pretty quick, especially since a lot of these blue-red Spellslinger Stormy kind of decks have a lot of cantrips in them, so you're going to be able to keep refilling your hand, at least at a decent rate. So I don't think it's going to be that hard. What's kind of awkward is the aggro part of it. So I think an interesting way to build this might be to play a bunch of instants and sorceries that create tokens. There's plenty of those. So that would probably be a decent way to fill up the board and go with this aggro plan that Kari Zev is kind of bringing to the table. So ultimately, I think I'm not that interested in Spellslinger Storm decks. I've played them before, and they tend to be kind of complicated to play, and they drag the game out a lot. So for me personally, I don't love these kind of decks, but the fact that if you did build it that way that I just suggested, and you kind of go with a more aggro plan of it, would be kind of cool. I'm going to put it in B. Probably not something I would build, but it is kind of cool. All right, next up we have Rigmos and Fibble. I hope I said both of those names right. They're both kind of ridiculous. So for 2 green, blue, red, 6/5 Cyclops. I know how to speak the English words. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. Then you may discard any number of lands. When you discard one or more cards this way, it deals twice that much damage to target creature, and you can pay 1 and a blue to put it on top of its library, third from the top. Flavor-wise, art-wise, this card is kind of cool. So Fibble, it has the draw card kind of thing, and then Rigmos is the discarding lands to do damage. I will say the fact that it can only deal that damage to creatures isn't great. And if you have this as your commander, right, you probably are running way more than the average number of lands, right? You're probably running like 45 lands, so that way you have a grip full of lands, and you're going to be able to just clear the board out pretty efficiently, I would assume. But there are also so many indestructible creatures nowadays that I don't know how efficient this actually is. So for me, I don't think this card is actually very good. I see a world where maybe it's decent, but I don't think it's very good, and but the art's beautiful, and it's a mashup of the century. I'm gonna put it in C. If someone ends up making a cool deck out of it, send the deck list in the comments, and I will take a look at it, and I will change my mind if I see fit. All right, next up we have Bright Palm Soul Awakener. So this is one of the face commanders from one of the new precons. So this is for 1 red, green, white Fox Shaman 4/3 with backup 1. When this creature enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following ability until end of turn. When this creature attacks, double the number of 1/1 counters on target creature. That creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. So this is kind of a +1/+1 kind of counters matter commander, which we see all the time, especially in these colors. Nothing too original. This backup mechanic does seem kind of cool. I haven't extensively looked at this is the one deck of the new commander precons that I haven't extensively looked at, but I do think that this backup mechanic is actually going to be really, really cool and exciting. It's at least a new, interesting kind of way to do the +1/+1 counter synergy. So I'm not interested in playing it, but at least it seems kind of cool, and so we'll put that in B. All right, next up we have Brimaz, Blight of Oresko. So this is another one of the face commanders from the precon. This is for 2 white, black, 3/4 Phyrexian cat. Oh yeah, look how ripped this boy is. Good kitty. Whenever you cast a Phyrexian creature or artifact creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value, which incubate is a new mechanic where you create a incubator token with X +1/+1 counters on it, and you can pay 2 to transform it, and it transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian creature token. So it's thematically like eggs and you like hatch the eggs or something, and they're these big Phyrexian creatures, something like that. And then at the beginning of each end step, if a Phyrexian died under your control this turn, proliferate, which then is obviously going to make all of those a little bit bigger. This as a like Phyrexian commander is pretty cool. I think there's enough stuff in the set. If you look in like the not legendary creatures, there's like a Phyrexian Lord, and there's some Phyrexian payoffs, and it's specifically in these colors. A lot of those cards are. So I definitely think that there's the shell here to make a good Phyrexian tribal deck kind of thing. But I think this is a lot stronger just as a Orzhov artifact kind of deck. I like these kind of tokens. Like, they remind me a lot of clue tokens and food tokens. And I like these kind of fair artifact kind of synergies, which, I mean, obviously there's ways to break even the fair tokens in fair artifacts in Magic, because artifacts are just inherently really strong. But I think this is pretty dang sweet. I am thinking about picking up this precon. I haven't decided yet, but I'm going to put this in A. I'm not going to for sure build this deck. I'm not going to for sure pick up this precon, but I see a world where I do. All right, next up we have Drew and Hazareth. So this is a team up card from Amonkhet. So for 2 red, white, 5/4 human god. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, it has vigilance and haste. And then when it attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may exile a legendary creature from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Until end of turn, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. As a commander, I don't know how good this is actually going to be. But if you put it in the 99 of the newer version of Joda that came out in Dominaria United, that seems really good. It gives you an extra way to kind of get extra legendaries into play. And even then, if you thought that, oh, the new Joda gives me too many options because it's 5 colors. If you wanted to build a similar kind of deck and limit your options to only 2 colors, I think this would be a pretty sweet backup. I actually kind of like this, and I also really like Amonkhet. That was a set from back when I was still playing Standard more regularly than I do now. So I have fond memories of Amonkhet. I'm going to put this in the B. I think it's pretty decent if you want to go Legendary Creatures Matter, and specifically want to keep it to 2 colors. Next up, we have Drana and Linvala for 1 white, black, 3/4 Vampire Angel. Oh yeah, that's the mashup. Flying Vigilance. Activate abilities of creatures your opponent control can't be activated, so it's a nice taxing effect. It has all activate abilities of all creatures your opponents control. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. So this is a really cool taxing effect. Let's think about the Ellis Nord from Phyrexia All Will Be One, right? That was a taxing effect that everyone was like, please don't get rid of this card. Everyone hates it. This is like, even if you play that card fairly, it's still just going to be real rude. This is like, I feel like a lot more fair because activate abilities aren't as frequent as enter the battlefield effects. And they tend to be, well, obviously still important, right? I mean, if it has an activate ability, that's probably the reason you put it in your deck to begin with. But the fact that she also gets to take those activate abilities seems pretty dang cool. I feel like it's pretty situational. I feel like there are going to be times where she's going to come down and she's not going to do anything that either helps you or she's not going to do anything that is going to impact the game on the greater scale. Maybe she's going to come down and not do anything at all. Who knows? But I think if you're just playing a white-black kind of taxing, kind of policing, control kind of deck, at least put it in the 99. As the commander, I don't think it's going to be that good. But we're going to go ahead and put it in C because I think it's a good card. I'm not sold that it's a great commander if that's the kind of deck you want to build, though. All right, next up we have Elenda and Azor, sure, for 2 white, blue, black, 6/6 Vampire Knight Sphinx. Awesome. Man, I love these team up cards so much, guys. Let me know in the comments which one's your favorite. But this is with flying and Ward 2. When it attacks, you may pay X white, blue, black. If you do, draw X cards. At the beginning of each end step, you may pay 4 life. If you do, create a number of 1/1 Vampire Knight creature tokens with lifelink equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. This is pretty sweet. So here's the downside. It's 6 mana. And 6 mana commanders are definitely a lot worse than they used to be. And then its main payoff is going to be the drawing cards, which it's an expensive effect already. Then you have to attack with it. And not that a 6/6
isn't a big creature. You probably could get in for some damage. You could probably survive in combat, but these days, again, 6 mana is on the slower side. So by the time you get out, you might not have an effective attack option. Now, granted, it does have at the end of each end step, so maybe the correct way to play that isn't necessarily worrying about combat, but worrying about just playing a bunch of decent, efficient cards that are going to be netting you cards. So you'll end up with more than a couple cards for each of those that you're casting. Have ways to maybe have Thought Vessel out, maybe have Reliquary Tower out, so that you don't have maximum hand size. You're going to only for 4 life get who knows how many of those tokens. 4 life at your end step. If you have a full grip of 7, you're going to make 7 1/1s, and they're all going to have lifelink. Oh, it's only for the cards you've drawn this turn. I don't know. I think it's really, really cool. I don't think it's good. I am gonna go. Do I put this in the A or do I put it in the B? Because it's really cool. I don't think it's good. We'll put it in B. If I feel like the B gets too stacked, we'll put it at top of B. How about that? And maybe I'll change my mind depending on how the rest of this list ends up looking. All right. So we have another double-faced card. So this is the new Ellis Nord, and I don't necessarily like that all of the Phyrexian Praetors in this set are just their name without any descriptor. I think that's kind of weird. It's, if it was like the first time we saw these characters, whatever, but now I think it's kind of weird, but that's nitpicky. That has nothing to do with my actual evaluation of these cards. So Ellis Nord is a 2 white Phyrexian Praetor, 3/5 with Vigilance. Whenever a source an opponent control deals damage to you or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. And then for 2 and a white, sacrifice 3 other creatures, exile it, then return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery. And all of these Phyrexian Praetors on the backside are sagas, and they're pretty cool. So this one is the Argent Etchings. So chapter 1, it incubate 2 5 times. So you'll make 5 incubate tokens and put 2 1/1 counters on each of them, I think. And then transform all incubator tokens you control. So you just added, 10 power to the board? That's pretty bonkers. And then chapter 2, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. Chapter 3, destroy all other permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians, exile it, and return it to the battlefield front face up. So I will go ahead and say this because this is the first of these saga Phyrexians that we're going to be talking about. For the most part, we're only going to be judging these by the front because it's going to be very hard to flip them a lot of the time, I think. Some of them are going to be easier than others, right? So Ellis Nord coming down, and then 3 mana, sacrifice 3 creatures to flip it. That's not too hard, but I will say that, are you going to wait till you have 7 mana to do that right away? If you're a mono white deck, right? No, you're probably going to run out Ellis Nord on turn 4, turn 5, something like that. Maybe if you ramp to maybe turn 3, you're going to want to have that little bit of protection. With that said, the taxing effect on the front of Ellis Nord is actually pretty decent. That means that a lot of these 1/1 creatures that you might have floating around, like if let's say you're playing against a token deck or a go wide deck, something like that. If they are going to swing out on you, their creatures need to have lifelink, they have to be way farther ahead in life than you, they need to have a ton of extra mana. There's a lot of situations where Ellis Nord is just a really good protection piece. It's think like Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, cards like that. It is very similar to that. Because it's any source of damage, right? Yeah, this also just hoses burn, and I do actually still play Standard. I know a lot of people watching this video don't play Standard, but Red is already not very good. Burn is already not very good in Standard right now. It didn't need this help from Ellis Nord. So the fact that there are so many white token producers does make me think that flipping Ellis Nord isn't going to be that hard. But once you do, it's just an enchantment that's just sitting there, and I feel like it opens up to being just as much of a target as it is with Ellis Nord, or people are going to bring out their board wipes right away because when you do that first chapter on that saga, you're going to be adding 10 power to the board. That's a lot. So my guess is that while this is obviously a lot more fair than our last Ellis Nord, I don't think it's actually going to be
like as hard to deal with. I think people are going to see what you're trying to do. What I will say is if you are playing some kind of deck that needs to protect yourself a lot, so I've started running a lot of these kind of protection pieces in like Voltron builds. So if you like, you know, Voltron builds, you probably don't have as many creatures. You're not going to be able to block as well because you're just focusing a lot of your card slots to buffing up your one creature. You need to have ways to protect yourself though. Ellis Nord I think is going to be pretty good for that. I don't know if she's a great commander though, but I think if you're running a token deck or a deck that's going to be wanting to protect yourself more, then all of a sudden she's pretty dang good because then she's not going to be that hard to flip. So we'll put her in C. I think she's a good 99 piece. I don't think she's a good commander. All right, next we have Argent and Giada. 1 white blue 2/3 human angel. This is from New Capenna. Flash flying. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. So disclaimer, I thought that this would work and it doesn't. It does not work with anything that's like changing to like, you could cast this as though it had flash. Well, you're not giving those flash, right? So like Vidalcan Ore, for example, right? It doesn't mean all of a sudden mean you can start, if you have Vidalcan Ore, it doesn't mean you can start playing things from the top of your library. You can't do that. However, there are like a couple other white blue flash matters kind of commanders, so this is good either in the 99 of those decks, or those cards are good in the 99 of this deck. And then this also has the kind of payoff if you're just trying to play Flying Tribal, which I had a Flying Tribal deck when I first got into Magic, you know, just white, blue, you play some birds, you play some angels. Everyone likes angels. Angels are awesome. So I think this is pretty good. Think about this though. Is it actually a good angel commander? I don't think so, but it's at least an option. If you wanted to play Azorius Angels, this is your best option, right? If you are playing an angel deck that has blue in it, this is probably going to go in there, but I don't know what other options there would be. Overall, I think this card is pretty cool. I'm not interested in building it, but I do think it's good. We'll put it in B. All right, next up we have Atali, which I do love these big old dinosaurs from Ixalan. I am excited when we go back to Ixalan later this year. Front side is Atali Primal Conqueror for 5 red, 7/7 Elder Dinosaur with Trample. And then when it enters the battlefield, each player exiles card from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. And then for 9 and a Fire Exian green, transform it, activate only as a sorcery, and it transforms into Atali Primal Sickness, which is an 11/11 with Trample and Indestructible. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. This is this is so good. So original Atali is one of my favorite cards that I never play. It's always like the 101st card in a lot of decks because you have to wait for it to attack to start doing it. But the fact that this Atali, yes, it's 1 more mana, but because of how the color identity works in Commander, this is actually Gruul. So you have green, so you're going to be able to ramp. So it costs him 1 more mana, probably not that big of a deal. Enters the battlefield, you get to start doing that right away. You're going to get a ton of value right away. And again, because you have that green, how much is it going to matter that you have to pay that 9/10 mana, depending on if you want to pay the life or not, to transform it? I think it's going to be pretty easy. You're going to want to have some haste enablers in there, which red and green are great for doing that, because I think when it does flip, it's going to be pretty scary. Basically, Blightsteel Colossus, but it's a dinosaur. That's awesome. So I'm actually thinking that this is pretty cool. I personally don't really care for Gruul decks. I said that in a couple episodes ago in our Commander gameplay series where I had to play a Gruul deck because we like spun a wheel and I just had to play whatever color combination I landed on. I don't necessarily like Gruul decks, but if this card existed back when we made that episode, I would try to play this because this is awesome. Being able to play cards off of your opponent's decks is really fun. And then again, Dinosaur, Blightsteel. It doesn't get much cooler than that. This is going to have to go in the A tier. I see myself maybe building this someday. All right, next up we have Galta and Maverick. 3 green, white, Dinosaur Vampire, 12/12 with Trample. Whenever you attack, choose 1. Create a tapped and attacking XX green dinosaur creature token with Trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. And then create X11 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. So the fact that it's a 12/12 with Trample means you're probably going to have at least one opponent that you can safely attack. That's always my concern with commanders that have to attack, because your deck's built around your commander, right? If you have to attack to get its ability, right, you're setting yourself up for your opponent having the ability to just chump block it enough to kill it in combat, and then you don't get the ability again. So then you just wasted a ton of mana, and you probably could have done something more efficient on your turn. I will say also though, 7 mana, 12/12, that's pretty crazy. So I actually think that this card is actually fairly efficient, but it doesn't have haste. So I don't know. I think this card's actually relatively hard to evaluate. If you are playing a token deck, this is a really good like top end kind of card, good for like the top of your curve. But as the commander, if you were playing green, white tokens, you just have better options. Now, maybe you're, wanting to go green, white vampires. I don't know why you would do that, but you could. If you want to go green, white dinosaurs, I don't know why you wouldn't want to play one of the ones that also has red in it, but you could if you wanted to keep it down. So I see scenarios where that works. I just don't think that's great. I think it's good for the 99 on the top end of a token deck, but otherwise I'm not convinced that's good to be that good. But great include for the dinosaur deck for sure. All right, next up we have Gremlin Prodigy. So this is the another one of the face commanders from the precons. This is for 2 green, blue, red, 4/4 Gremlin Artificer. Artifact creature tokens you control have trample. Woo! And then at the beginning of your end step, create a 0/0 red gremlin artifact creature token. Put X/1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of different named artifact creature tokens you control. So the fact that this is a Temur artifact matters commander, that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty cool. The fact that it has the size of these tokens though, they won't count themselves when they're counting how big they're going to get, right? Because it's for artifact tokens you control that have different names. So I will say that does create a cool scenario. You're going to play your food tokens, your clue tokens, your treasure tokens, your gold tokens. There's going to be a lot of different tokens to dip into, or maybe in these colors. I guess there might be a way to get those new incubator tokens that we were talking about with some of these other commanders. So I definitely see that this could be really cool. And again, it's very Temur that it's giving them trample. I just am not convinced though, unless you have like some kind of token doubler in effect, or you can create an engine. Like there is that one artifact creature that is like, if you would create a treasure, a clue, or a food token, then you create one of each instead. That card obviously needs to be in here. That's a great include in this deck. I feel like the ceiling on this card is relatively low. I think you're going to make some decent sized creatures. You're only going to be making one a turn unless you have some kind of token doubler. You could just be playing good artifact creatures, not worrying about the tokens as much, in which case maybe it's better. But I'm still going to have to put that top of C, bottom of B. We'll put it at bottom of B. It's definitely not bad. It's definitely got a lower ceiling than a lot of other commanders we've talked about. Next we have Glissa, Herald of Predatory for 3 black, green, 3/5 Phyrexian zombie elf. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1. Incubate 2 twice. Transform all incubator tokens you control. Phyrexians you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn. If you are building a Phyrexian deck, this is definitely very good. If you have a deck that has a lot of these incubate tokens lying around, which are Phyrexians when they flip, it's pretty good. I was going on in the last commander tier video that the new Glissa from Phyrexia All Will Be One, the combination of first strike with death touch is pretty brutal because it makes it to where your opponent's really going to be struggling in combat. So there was the Phyrexia All Will Be One precon that was Abzan. I think that probably is a pretty decent shell to take a lot of these other new cards and upgrade that deck into more of a Toxic obviously is more of the focus of that, but you could probably just upgrade that into being a Phyrexian kind of tribal deck. So I don't know if this by itself is going to be all that good as a commander. In the 99 of a Phyrexian deck, it's pretty dang good. But I don't know. I personally really like Glissa. I've liked every version of Glissa that we've gotten. So I wanna put her in somewhere in the lower part of B as well. Pretty cool, but I'm not convinced that the ceiling's very high. Goro and Sataru for blue, black, red. 3/4 Goblin Human. Whenever one or more creatures you control that enter the battlefield this turn deals combat damage to a player, create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying. And then for 1 and a red creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. So my main concern about this would be you would want to be playing a lot of creatures with haste, but the fact that on the commander itself you have the ability to give your creatures haste, that's pretty good. So I think if you wanted to just play a bunch of hasty boys so that you can just worry about on turn 3 getting this down, that actually probably is a pretty decent play option as well. And, getting to make these bunch of really big dragon spirit creature tokens that have flying, you're going to be able to stay in this pretty. I think this one's good. I think this one's strong. I think you're going to be able to get a bunch of really big creatures really fast. And the fact that this comes down on turn 3, you theoretically might already have a hasty creature in there that on turn 2, turn 3, that you're going to be able to get in there, get some damage right away. I think this is actually pretty good. We're going to put this in the A. Also, Kamigawa is just awesome. I did another video just talking about how much I love Kamigawa because I think it was one of my favorite sets in the last couple years. All right, next up we have Heliad. This boy's been completed. So Heliad, the Radiant Dawn for 2 white, 4/4 enchantment god. When it enters the battlefield, return target enchantment card that isn't a god from your graveyard to your hand. And then for 2 in a Phyrexian blue, transform it, activate only as a sorcery, and then it turns into Heliad, the Warped Eclipse. 4/6 Phyrexian god. You may cast spells as though they had flash, and then spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponent has drawn this turn. A lot of these I try to just judge by the face because some of them, it's mana intensive and the backside maybe isn't as good. How reliably are you going to be able to flip it? But I think that this backside of Heliad is strong enough to try to build it around it. I think the best way to do this is probably just white, blue, enchantment matters. I think it would be really cool if there were a lot of enchantments that had sacrifice abilities. And white, blue is also good for flickering. So, right, you could get Heliad down, get something back that you sacrificed, and then you could flicker it, do it multiple times. And then when it's time to flip it, you do that. And then Heliad reducing the cost of those spells is going to be really sweet on other people's turns. So I think people's main concern that I've seen about this is that because it is white-blue color identity, you can't put this in like Sithis, right? Which is fine because Sithis is broken and way too strong. So that's probably for the best that we can't have those playing together, unless you were playing like Bant, right? There are Bant enchantment decks, in which case it's great in the 99 of that. I actually have never built an enchantment deck because it kind of just feels like Sithis is like the go-to for the most part, and Sithis is too strong, draws a lot of hate early in the game, and you kind of steamroll, and you get to the point where there's so many triggers that it's hard to keep track of everything. Though I will say that if I was going to build a enchantment deck, I would consider building this one, just because less enchantment focused and more about the flickering and sacrificing. It seems more up my alley, so we're gonna put that in A. All right, this is a long video. I'm gonna split this into 2 parts and have part 2 come out in a couple days. So the last one we'll talk about today, and then you can come back on. I don't know. We'll in the next couple days we'll have part 2 come out. Last one for part 1. We'll have hit Sugu and carry 2 blue black 5/4 Ogre Demon Dragon, because why not? With flying, enters the battlefield, draw 3, then put 2 on from your hand on top of your library, so Brainstorm. And then when it dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So a really cool way to build this would be do that Brainstorm effect, put something major, like huge instant or sorcery on top of your library, a lot of mana value, and have some kind of sacrifice outlet, or maybe you have like a Village Rites or something, or a card in hand that will make you sacrifice it to immediately get that kind of payoff. I think that that's probably the interesting, most exciting way to play this. But that's not very efficient when it's a 5 mana commander that you're just, unless you have like a way to play it from your graveyard efficiently, that commander text is going to add up really quick. So I think the actual correct way to play this is just black-blue Spellslinger, which is actually kind of cool, but definitely less interesting than what I just said. But I think that does open it up to interesting implications for constructed. So I'm interested to see what happens there. But we'll go ahead and put this in probably B tier, because if you want to play black blue Spellslinger, that's fine by me, but that just doesn't tickle my personal fancy. All right, I am losing my voice. We will do the other half of this at a later day. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Of these commanders that we talked about today, which are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments below. We will come back here in a couple days for part 2. See you later.